Console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello and welcome to On the Origin of Battlemechs. My name is Joshua, call sign Enigma, and I'll be your host for this episode on the Kintaro. My co-host tonight is,
I'm Chandler.
and joining us once more is,
I'm Dustin.
thank you for taking some time out of the mech bay to come down here and record with us.
It is my pleasure.
Today's episode is on the Kintaro. It is another 55-ton medium mech developed in 2587 by General Mechanics. General Mechanics designed the Kintaro around the NARC missile beacon, placing this new bit of technology in the heavily protected center torso and integrating it directly with the mech's internal circuitry rather than having it as kind of a standalone system. The Kintaro was designed, like I said, around the NARC missile, but it has ample SRM firepower to deal with most threats. And the Kintaro is usually used to spot for friendly quote-unquote artillery mechs with large missile quantities or large missile racks, because the NARC beacon is designed to attach to an enemy mech. You can't get it off, and it sends out a homing beacon that makes LRM fire more accurate, and SRM fire if it's equipped with SRM with NARC beacon warheads. In classic terms, what this is a +2 on your cluster roll table, which means you're more likely to get more hits. The Kintaro developed a decent reputation, but doesn't have a very notable military history during the Star League. It sees a lot of use, though, after the Star League in the Succession Wars, where its relative simplicity, SRMs, LRMs, and a medium laser on most models, allowed it to be maintained and constructed even at the reduced levels of the great houses. The original Kintaro is the KT019, as I said, out in 2587. It has a movement profile of 5'8", 10 single heat sinks, 10 tons of armor, a NARC beacon in the center torso, an LRM-5 in the left arm, an SRM-6 in the left arm, an SRM-6 in the right torso, 2 medium lasers in the right arm, and it has 1 ton of ammo for each of its launchers. Yeah, this is the Star League version, guys. NARC beacon, 12 SRM tubes, and a single LRM-5.
Is this the KTO19 we're looking at right now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like if I were a deft Kintaro pilot working for the Star League, I'd be pretty happy with my ride. You can get in close because that NARC launcher, you gotta get in there into knife fighting distance to deliver your payload, and you can blast your target with some really nice short range firepower, and you've got the maneuverability to kind of duck out and get to range again and let your missile boats mop up while you cool off, because boy, you can get your mech hot.
Yeah, Alpha Strike on this KTO19 is 16 points of heat, and you have 10 heat sinks and movement heat on top of that. So
yeah, it's a toasty boy.
Yeah, it's a hot mech. So you've got the, especially in 3025, you've got that. Sorry, this isn't 3025. Yeah, and I feel like in Battletech you got the triangle. You got speed, firepower, and armor. And I like this, Kintaro. It's got the armor and the speed and the firepower at the cost of the secret sauce, which is the heat sinks. So you kind of cheat the triangle a little bit by just being real hot.
yeah, I think battle mechs especially, they don't have necessarily the classic triangle you have in tanks. They've got a square, and that fourth corner is the heat. And this guy definitely doesn't go into heat management in order to maximize the other three.
Yeah, no, this thing is screaming for double heat sinks.
It is screaming for double heat sinks. That right there would make this a very, very good mech. And it's interesting because this mech predates the C3 concept by hundreds of years, but it's kind of like the good C3 spotters we've talked about in the past, where it wants to be at short range. It knows it wants to be at short range and is fast enough and tough enough to get there.
Yeah.
Because that NARC missile beacon has the same exact range profile as the SRMs and the medium lasers. 369, short, medium, long. So I always think it's a sign of a good mech if that mech has a mission profile, knows what that mission profile is, and is good at doing that mission. And I think the Kintaro is one of those mechs.
Yeah, you don't want to be a Shadowhawk. You want to be a Kintaro.
I like the Shadowhawk though, because I think it knows what it wants to do. I think it's equipped to do what it wants to do, and it does what it wants to do well. It's just what it wants to do as a generalist, whereas this guy is a close-up brawler. Yeah, the only problem with this Kintaro, and we'll see it moving on to later models, is that Narc Beacon is not is not intro tech. So we're going to see it disappear after the fall of the Star League.
Yeah, it kind of loses part of its mission profile, its identity here shortly.
I think as an infantryman, I would not mind having a Kintaro be attached to my infantry battalion or infantry company because it's got all those SRMs. It's got that big, scary armored presence. I think it would be very good at dealing with enemy infantry and enemy bunkers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we need even more firepower, the Kto19 can flick a Narc beacon at that building, that reinforced building full of enemy infantry, and then our missile boats somewhere else can just rain on it.
Yeah, tag it and bring it down.
Not tag, Narc.
Ah, my bad.
Narc it.
Narc it and bring it down.
Narcan?
I was going to say, I've got an addiction, and it's SRMs.
I got an addition, and it rhymes with whoosh.
Sheesh.
So this Kto19 has a battle value of 1,160 and a point value of 36. It is followed by the Kto19B, so a royal variant, in 2731. So this is right before the fall of the Star League. The Kto19B has a movement profile of 5'8". It's got an XL fusion engine, 10 double heat sinks, 10.5 tons of armor, 2 medium lasers in the right arm, an LRM-15 in the left arm, an SRM-6 in the left arm, an SRM-6 in the right torso, an arc missile beacon in the center torso, and case in the left and right torsos. It has 2 tons of LRM-15 ammo, 2 tons of NARC ammo, and 2 tons of SRM-6 ammo.
So I guess with the royal variant of this Star League era Kintaro, the mission profile is similar, but slightly different in that you get in close, arc the target, unleash a steady stream of firepower because you have the heat sinks to back it up, and then you bug out before you lose your XL engine, and then you rain down with your sizable number of LRM tubes.
That, or my first thought was this royal variant would work well as a lance of all royal Kintaros, because you could have one guy narc and then the other 3 rain LRMs, and it's one of those situations where whichever mech is closest to the enemy or is in trouble can narc his target and then get support from his lance mates.
Yeah, LRM-15 is it's nothing to sneeze at. The LRM-5 on the the 19 standard it's an LRM-5.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah.
Yeah.
It's there to reach out and tickle.
Yeah, reach out and tickle.
Yep. When you're talking Battlemech scale, it's not that potent.
Yeah.
Even though it's still a decent weapon in a realistic setting, it's a decent weapon to support PBI.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
And they need all the support they can get.
Yes, they do. Gotta love on your PBI.
Yeah. I feel like this is a little bit of a side grade. I think it's kind of reflected in its battle value. That Inner Sphere XL engine is really devastating when it comes to survivability, in my opinion.
Yes. It's one of those things where it's always bad on the tabletop, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's always bad in Alpha Strike. In MechWarrior Online, it's bad on certain mechs, it's okay on other mechs. And in a realistic setting, I think it would reflect MechWarrior Online more than it does Classic, because it gives you a lot more firepower, or a lot more weight savings for firepower and armor and electronic warfare stuff. But if you've got a mech, it's like in MechWarrior Online, I've tried the XL on a Stalker, and that is a terrible idea because the Stalker's torsos are giant billboards asking to get shot. And so you lose your side torso and your whole mech's gone. I also used it on a Wolverine. I used an XL engine on my Wolverine, and it's just fine because the side torsos aren't as prominent, and you will take a much better spread of damage across it just by positioning yourself and the shape of the torso to where you're just as likely to lose your center torso as you are your side torso. So putting an XL engine in that mech doesn't hurt you as much.
Yeah.
And that's something that the tabletop doesn't really capture.
I think with the Royal variant, you're going to have talented pilots in that mech, and they're going to know how to, and more precisely, when to disengage and keep their mech on the field, right? So they're, you pay for your talent in survivability, perhaps.
Yeah, if you have the talent to make good use
Make
of
the
your
right
mech.
decisions.
Yeah, I think it also for the Kintaro really depends on whether those Jetson's robot shoulder pads are part of the torso or part of the arms.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if those are part of the torso, as silly as it sounds, they're going to cause you to lose your XL engine more frequently. But if they're part of the arms, there's no XL engine in them. It's one of those weird things where physically and realistically, something like that doesn't make as much sense as, or the way it's done with the tabletop and even MechWarrior Online doesn't make as much sense because you don't have your fusion engine and these giant poofy shoulders.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, you don't have like a quote unquote center torso. It's like an upper torso, lower torso kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's one nice thing about Alpha Strike. The penalty might be a little bit too much on your structure for taking an XL engine, but not having to kind of justify why getting your high shoulder blown off is going to damage your XL engine. It's not something you have to do in Alpha Strike. Here's your structure, and it's less because your engine does take up more room. But all right, so the Royal Kintaro 19B has a battle value of 1,265 and a point value of 39. It is followed by the Kintaro 18 in 2792. The Kintaro 18 is produced by General Dynamics instead of General Mechanics and is the post-Amaris coup variant because during the coup, the RimWorld's Republic destroyed the factory on Mars, and that included the ability to manufacture the NARC beacon, the integrated NARC beacon for this mech. So the Kintaro 18 has a movement profile of 5'8". It has 11 tons of armor, 10 single heat sinks, a medium laser in the right arm, an SRM-6 in the right torso, a medium laser, an LRM-5, and an SRM-6 in the left arm, and an SRM-6 in the center torso. So this guy basically swaps the NARC beacon for an SRM-6 in the center torso, and then moves one of the medium lasers from the right arm to the left arm, which I don't like, I think. I don't know, what do you guys think? Taking a medium laser from the right arm and putting it in the left arm with the LRM-5 and SRM-6.
I feel like it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you lose your right arm, you've lost your ability to fire behind you, at least on the tabletop, literally speaking, with your medium lasers. And if you lose an arm, you only lose one of the medium lasers, so you can fire into your rear arc with one of the medium lasers.
Yes, but at the same time, I feel like you've got more weapons on your left arm, so if that arm is the one that gets blown off, you're down 3 weapon systems now instead of 2.
That's true. It's also difficult, at least in speaking to classic Battletech, to kind of give an opponent an arc. So, it's kind of less. It's not easy to have a shield side, so to speak, in the first place. So
yeah, that's definitely more of a video game and
yeah,
maybe realism thing is being able to shield
Roll
one
that
side or
damage.
the other.
Yeah. It's definitely even toastier now. I heard you liked hot mechs. How about an even hotter mech?
I definitely think the shift of the medium laser to the other arm makes it probably a bit more of a nightmare for repairs and everything. Because instead of having just double the conduits to one arm, now you have conduits to both arms for the energy requirements for those.
Yeah, it's just a more complicated wiring harness, right?
Yep. And now
Something like that.
Now you're not just wiring for your 2 missile systems and running ammo for your 2 missile systems. You're trying to snake all the wiring for that laser in there as well. All right. Got anything more on this guy, or should we move on?
I mean, yeah, the Kintaro is a classic hit and run mech. It's got lots of guns. It doesn't have any, staying power as far as heat's concerned. It has decent armor for a 55 toner.
Now, isn't this Kamea's original mech?
Kamea Arano's
Yes.
original mech. And in HBS Battletech, the Alpha Strike ability is quite different than it is on the tabletop. There's mechs that change character between HBS Battletech and the tabletop, and I'd say the Kintaro, not so much as the Rifleman or the Jaeger mech, but it definitely hits harder in HBS Battletech than it does on the tabletop. If you Alpha Strike with this mech on the tabletop, I mean, the thing is going to be moving at what, 3-2? Because you've got -2 to your movement modifier. You've got +1 to your to-hit modifier. It's a bad deal. But in HBS Battletech, you can Alpha Strike with this thing, I think, for at least a turn without taking overheat damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some mechanics going on inside HBS that kind of help balance a lot of these mechs in a way that Classic can't quite do by tweaking little things in the background.
Yeah, like in HBS Battletech, the Stalker is just you really don't want to see a Stalker come around the corner and open up on you. Where in Tabletop, you're going to be punished harshly for Alpha Striking in the Kintaro. I run this mech pretty conservatively on the tabletop in Classic Battletech, and it really fills that striker role with much more character in the HBS Battletech game.
Yeah, but in the fluff realm of things, I do find it very interesting that the Kintaro 18 makes the Kintaro almost more popular than the older Kintaros, just because it just gives you more gun. And everyone's like, I like more gun, and I don't have to rely on other people.
Yeah, I feel like the Star League era Kintaro has a much better idea of what its role is on the battlefield, and the Kintaro 18 is still a striker, but I feel like its ability to fulfill its role is maybe a little more diminished because its 5'8" movement profile is important, especially without jump jets. Slowing this mech down is pretty disadvantageous in Classic Battletech.
I mean, the 18's still a 5'8" movement profile.
Yeah, but once you heat it up, if you Alpha Strike,
this guy definitely needs doubles.
Yep.
And I mean, that's kind of reflected in his stats, or his battle value and point value. He's got a battle value of 1,187 and a point value of 36. And I think with double heat sinks, we'd expect that to be 20% higher, maybe 15% higher. Next up in 3035, we have the Kintaro 20. The 20 has a movement profile of 5'8", still doesn't jump. It has a large laser in the center torso, an SRM-6 and an LRM-5 in the right torso, an SRM-6 in the left arm, and 2 medium lasers in the right arm. So this guy shifted a lot of things around. Still has 10 tons of armor, and now has 10 double heat sinks. So we finally got a double heat sink model.
It's interesting with the addition of the large laser to the center torso. I feel like the Kintaro 20 has much more of a bracket build than its short-range shotgun brethren.
Give our listeners a brief understanding of what you mean by bracket build.
Yeah, so with the LRM-5 on the KTO 18 and 19, you've got the range profile of 7, 14, and 21 for short, medium, and long range, respectively. Every other weapon is firing at 369. That large laser hitting out at 5, 10, and 15 hexes for short, medium, and long range. That 8 damage with the LRM-5 actually gives you an option to bracket your firing profiles, so you can skirmish at range for a little while. And then if your target closes with you, or if you decide to close with your target, you can open up with those shorter range weapons, that being the SRMs and the medium lasers. So instead of dumping all of your firepower into a sniper build or a brawler build, a bracket build is kind of something in between those two.
Half of its weapons want to be long range, half want to be short range.
Yeah.
And I think that actually is a great way for some of these early intro tech units like the Kintaro or the Stalker you mentioned previously to get around their heat limitations and pack on more firepower, because they can pack on that high heat large laser and middle-ish heat, well, kind of low heat because it's only an LRM-5, and use those at long range and then switch to its short range weapons and just not shoot its long range weapons, giving you good firepower at both ranges at the expense of not shooting all of them because you don't have the heat load for all of that.
Yeah, and that's a built-in option. This mech is even with the double heat sinks, it's generating 24 heat. But medium lasers in short range do more damage per heat, which is what you're concerned about when you're actually on the field, than a large laser does. So you just quit firing that large laser and you open up with those mediums instead, and you have the potential to do even more damage for less heat.
And the origins of this Kintaro 20 are interesting. I don't think it's actually a production model, although perhaps later on it was put into production. But it started out as the comm guards stripping their Kintaro 19s with the Narca beacon to give them to the Draconis Combine to help out in the War of 3039, because Comstar really does not like the FedCom.
Yeah, they sense a disturbance in the balance of the inner sphere, and the comm guards are all about keeping the everybody in the Stone Age so they can't nuke each other into oblivion anymore. But you can't be handing out narc beacons.
Because that's advanced technology.
That's right. You want to keep them simple.
How dare you have transponders that make loud noises? How dare you?
Yeah.
So no AC-20. This must be a sad mech for Chandler.
Yeah. Every time we start recording and I notice the mech doesn't have an AC-20, I just kind of sigh to myself.
Yeah, you just kind of check out. You're like,
I wipe away the tears a little bit and then realize that, not everything needs to have an AC-20. And then I get over it.
but everything should have an AC-20, right?
Everything should, but not everything has to.
Well, this Kintaro 20 has a battle value of 1,357 and a point value of 40. Our next mech is the Kintaro Kto-C in 3051. And as you might expect from that timing and that nomenclature, this is a Draconis Combine C3 variant. This Kintaro the Kintaro C has a the Kintaro Kto-C, we don't have a clan variant, so want to leave that nomenclature open. Has a movement profile of 5'8", still no jump, has a large laser in the center torso, an LRM-5 in the right torso, an SRM-6 in the right torso, an SRM-6 in the left arm, and a medium laser in the right arm. And C3 Slave is housed in the right torso. 10 double heat sinks and 10 tons of ferrofibrous armor. So I feel this Dash C almost gets back to the original role for the Kintaro, that of a spotter.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they have all of their, the Kintaros that they received, the 20s, as opposed to their more short range, dedicated 19s and 18s, because now the large laser doesn't have any minimum range, but it could have helped, or it could have done its job perhaps more potently with the extra SRM-6 and the medium laser as opposed to the large laser. Because what it looks like the Draconis Combine did here is drop a medium laser and maybe something else and cram that C3 Slave in there.
It's just the medium laser that they lost.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that. Because that large laser does not have a minimum range, so you can still use it up close.
Mm-hmm.
You can bracket fire with it like you were talking about as you close in. And you lose that 5 points of damage from the medium laser, but you're either getting much better targeting from somebody else or you're handing out really good targeting to your allies, which I think more than makes up for it.
Yeah.
So I'm perfectly happy to lose a medium laser to gain a C3 Slave unit.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I like the C3 better than the Narc. I feel like it's more generally useful, but to keep it in the flavor of this helps missiles, I feel like the Narc does the job a little bit, just a touch better.
Yeah.
But the C3 is just so useful. It's a better choice in general.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the C3 over the Narc, in addition to C3 being useful for all weapons, not just missiles, the Narc you have to hit with.
That's true.
The C3 you just have to be in your ally's short range bracket.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the C3, at least when you're running classic Battletech, introduces extra math into your list building, does it not?
Yes.
Which is why I personally dislike the C3 network. But that's a...
C3 is plus 10% of the BV of all of the mechs all of the units that have it.
Yeah.
And that's per mech, so it gets funky, but it's basically like if I remember correctly, because I used to run quite a bit of C3, and before I started using a list builder that took care of it for me, it was something along the lines of if I was running 3 mechs with battle value, I would group them separately, add their battle value up, and add 30% to that or something like that. But if you're going to use C3, get Solaris Skunkworks Battle Force Balancer or Mega Mech and plug your unit
have the
into
computer
that.
do the math for you.
Yeah,
that's kind of a meta reason. But in game, in lore, I like the C3 computer. I like the KTOC.
Alpha Strike on this guy is now only 21 heat over your 20 heat sinks, and you're honestly probably not going to do that because if you're using your SRMs and your medium laser, you're way too close for your LRM5. So this guy's actually more than likely going to be heat neutral or 1 point of heat,
which is very, very sustainable.
You were going to say something, Chandler?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay.
I just feel like me and Dustin are vibing here because he's used to dealing with Joshua, so I want to make sure you're getting your 2 cents in.
Oh, don't worry about me.
All right, so now the Love Fest is over. The Kintaro KTOC has a BV of 1,294 and a point value of 43. Most expensive point value on our list tonight. It is followed up by the KTOK in 3058. This is another Draconis Combine variant. This one's pretty radical, though.
Radical.
It has a movement profile of 585.
Jump jets.
10 double heat sinks, 10 tons of Ferrofaboris armor, has a C3 slave in the head, a Streak SRM-6 in the left arm, 3 ER medium lasers in the right arm, a Streak SRM-6 in the right torso, case in the left torso, where it has 2 tons of Streak SRM-6 ammo, and then of course it's 5 jump jets to give it some jump. So this guy has no long-range firepower at all.
None to speak of.
Technically, it has ER medium lasers, which have a slightly better range bracket than standard short-range weapons. Standard short-range for our listeners is 369 for short, medium, long, and the ER medium laser has 4812. Which, when you compare it to the quintessential long-range weapon or medium-range weapon of the large laser and the AC-10, those are 510-15. So it's not quite traditional medium range, but it's a little bit longer than traditional short range. This guy's going to be toasty again.
Yeah.
23 heat if you alpha strike. Not as bad as some we've seen, though.
Yeah, and then you also have the streaks, so they might not fire.
Yeah.
That's true.
You can always switch out an ER medium laser for your jump jets, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's easy on the brain for that elementary math, one for the other.
Yep, jump 5, because you always want to be jumping 5. And then only shoot 2 ER mediums.
Yeah, so adding jump jets to this chassis, turns it into an entirely different mech, in my opinion. All of a sudden, you're incredibly maneuverable in a city fight or, over difficult terrain. You can really get your short-range weapons in. You can get that C3 computer slave in. I love it.
Yeah, jump jets are probably the most broken piece of equipment in Classic, bar nothing, not even Clan Tech.
Especially at 55 tons, you're still only paying a half a ton. So you got 2.5 tons for 5 jump. That's a bargain.
Yeah, 5 jump makes your penalty the same as your opponent's penalty. Lets you ignore basically all of the rules in the movement phase and just go where you want as long as it's within 5 hexes. It's really good.
What do you think about this variant, Chandler?
Personally, I think this is probably the best of the C3 variants, which I guess now that I say that, there's only the 2, but it's just the C and the K. But I think this one definitely exemplifies the non-narc variants of just dragging it away from its intended design of this thing is built to carry a narc, and that is what it does. This one is, we're going to go a different direction. We're going to take this C3 slave thing that was developed, which is better, and we're just going to use it to shove this mech in someone's face, and then all of a sudden they get hit by every weapon conceivable.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that the Kintaro was designed around the narc beacon, and then there's only the 19 and the 19 Royal that actually carry it and use it, and they have fairly short lifespans.
Yeah.
I do like that it decided what it wanted to do, which is I want to get into knife fight range, and now it knife fights. I'm not sure if I like the addition of jump jets. They're good. It's really good, but I feel like it also kind of takes away a little bit of the flavor of the Kintaro not being a jumping mech.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes it so much better at getting to that short range bracket.
Exactly.
It's C3.
It's a bit of a devil's bargain kind of thing. You lose a little bit of the flavor for just a lot more not availability, what's the word I'm looking for?
Efficiency?
Success. Efficiency, yes.
Yeah, at least they didn't switch the engine out in this thing. I really don't like it when a mech variant has just a new engine. I'm like, well, it's not the same anymore. I feel like mech rolls are tied so deeply to their movement profiles that they kind of lose their flavor, like you're saying, when you switch that up.
Yeah, that is true. I think I would rather change the engine profile than do a one-off with jump jets, though, in terms of changing movement profile.
I'll have to respectfully disagree.
I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you respectfully disagreeing.
Maybe we should save this for our post-pilot profile discussion. We can talk jump jets and movement profiles.
All right.
Because I have words.
You got words. All right.
So to get out of this Kintaro Kto, we're going to talk about BV and PV. Battle value of 1571, point value of 42. Our last model of the night is the Kintaro Kto21. This guy is a Word of Blake and Comstar model. Has the traditional movement profile of 5'8", the same 275 fusion engine, 10 double heat sinks, 9.5 tons of ferrofibrosis armor, so the lightest armored mech we've seen in this family. It's got 2 ER medium lasers in the right arm, an improved C3 in the center torso, an improved NARC in the left torso, an SRM-6 in the right torso, and an SRM-6 in the left arm. Rounding it out is case in the right torso, where the SRM ammo and the NARC ammo is. Sorry, improved NARC ammo. So improved NARC, it basically, from what I'm seeing, is it increases the range on our NARC beacon from 369 to 4915, which is a pretty big boost.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, does it give you like a +3 on your table or anything else, or is it just the range increase?
I'm going to be straight up. I have no idea what the INARC.
It gets pretty ridiculous. So it essentially turns it into a Artemis 5 system.
Break that down for our listeners, Chandler.
So you essentially get so you get the +2 to your what's it called?
Cluster table?
Cluster table, yes. You get a +2 on the cluster table, so you get more missiles on target when you do hit. And then you also get a -1 to hit with the missiles coming in. So you have more of a chance to hit with some of the missiles. And then when you do hit, you have a better chance of getting more missiles on the target. So this thing takes missiles and makes them even scarier. And then in addition, since it's a, C3I variant, you also get all the benefits of it being short range. Although with it being an INARC, you can do it from decently far away. So, on that one. However, the one big downside is you can brush them off now. You couldn't brush off NARC pods. INARC pods are large enough they can get brushed off like infantry can. So, there's some downsides, but I think it's worth it? ?
Yeah. That is a downside, because traditionally the only way to stop being narked was to move into a C3 bubble, I believe, or to move into an ECM bubble, or get the location exploded,
which is not the best solution to your problem.
No,
but it might be the solution that's delivered to you, anyways.
But this improved narc, being able to get knocked off is a bummer. But yeah, it definitely improves incoming missile fire.
Something we have neglected to mention with the NARCs and INARCs is there's alternate ammo, which with the other two variants with the NARC launcher, or some variant of a NARC launcher, the 19 and 19B, alternate NARC ammunition didn't exist yet, but you can load up like explosive rounds, which do 4 damage per NARC. So you get almost a 15 range medium laser just to slap someone with. kind of as I just really need to kill this one little dude, just, iron arc him. You could totally pull the Iron Man, shoot the tank, and walk away as it explodes in the background.
Nice.
Now, I'm looking at it, and it mentions Nemesis Ammo. I have no idea if that's an actual thing or if that's just fluff text.
It is Nemesis Ammo. If I remember correctly, it's ammo that can mess with streaks. Nemesis. Oh, Nemesis is also known to me as the troll ammo. Essentially, what it does is you shoot it at something, and it broadcasts a wideband homing signal, and anything that is narc-equipped ammunition, along with semi-guided ammunition and Arrow 4 homing missiles, will go towards the
and Artemis
pod.
4.
In Artemis 4. Wait, I'm not sure about Artemis 4.
I'm looking at it right now. Upgraded to attract Artemis 4, semi-guided, and Arrow 4 homing missiles, in addition to attracting allied narc-equipped missiles.
I'm not sure if the
Yeah.
Artemis 4 one makes sense fluff-wise, but I'll go with it, I guess.
Yeah, because traditionally Artemis 4 is supposed to have like a built-in laser designator, I believe, or something like that. Still, that Nemesis pod on this Einarch is kind of scary. Earlier, Chandler, you said that this Kintaro 21 really turns up the whole missile spotting game. On a scale of 1,000 to 9,000, how far up does this turn the missile game?
See,
Over 9,000.
I know you're playing me, but you're right. Because it is over 9,000.
It's over 9,000.
How many missile boats would it take to shoot 9,000 missiles at once? That is how many missile boats this is worth.
Yeah, how many Vikings?
How many Vikings?
Or
Longbows.
Yennomans?
Let's see. Hold on. I can do the math.
So the battle value for the Kintaro 21 is 1,295, and the point value is 39.
It would take 128 Vikings to shoot over 9,000 missiles in one go. I did the math.
They did the math.
I ran the numbers.
Got out the Lost Tech calculator.
Yep.
Punched in the numbers.
Good old Microsoft calculator.
All right, for our pilot profiles tonight, we're going to start off with Rachel Sakurai. She was a Buso Senshi during the War of 3039 and was noted for being very conscious of civilian casualties during her stint as part of the 4th Ghost Regiment on Styx. She achieved 4 kills during that battle while saving St. Christina's Hospital. Later, she was promoted to Chusa and assigned as the Combine's military attaché to Comstar on Orestes. She found herself embroiled in a rabid battle between Comstar and Word of Blake at the dawn of the Jihad. Rather than allow herself to be caught up in the fury, she continued her legacy of preventing civilian casualties by working with local police and Orestes militia to keep the streets safe from roving war bands. Twice during the fighting on Orestes, her Kintaro suffered crippling strikes while she was protecting a civilian shelter, and both times she was saved at the last minute by the timely arrival of militia reinforcements. When you save the people help you.
The people.
So next up we have Lieutenant Jack Kidd. Oh, should I start?
Yes.
No, you're good.
Okay. So next up on our list of notable mech warriors, we have Lieutenant Jack Kidd. Despite being a good pilot, Kidd's personality overshadowed his battlefield performances. He declares himself kind of a privateer, dresses and acts like a 17th century pirate.
Odd.
Yeah, all of his. I
You
bet all of
can't-
his lance mates absolutely love that.
You can't see me right now, but I'm facepalming. Just,
You know, I bet all of his
Oh,
lance
no.
mates do love him because you know what 17th century pirates always had on hand? Rum.
What is that?
Lots and
That's
lots
right.
of rum.
But why is the rum always gone?
His superiors let his personality quirks slide because he was a competent lance commander. Opponents trying to close with his lance mates, fire support mechs, 2 trebuchets and a dervish, were rarely ready for the short-range punch that Kidd's Kintaro, the adventure mech, could unleash.
I
Kidd's
love that name.
comrades.
He named his mech the Adventure Mech.
Yes.
On one hand, it makes me smile. On the other hand, ugh.
I feel like I'm missing out on a... Did I, not watch Peter Pan or something?
No, I just find it hilarious.
No.
It's the adventure mech.
His comrades enjoyed his entertaining personality, but often find themselves wondering what will happen to his ego should he receive a promotion.
I can almost guarantee you his chain of command has already thought about promoting him and then realized that would make him Captain Kid and decided it was a bad idea.
Yeah, it's definitely in the no-go folder.
This week on Adventure Mech.
With Captain Kid. Oh, no.
Yeah.
He's going straight to Major. Battlefield promotion.
A privateer, if there ever was one.
He's a major kid, I guess you could say. All right, next up we have Kamea Arano from the HBS Battletech game. For those of you who have not played the campaign and are intending to, you may want to tune out for a little bit here, as this will contain spoilers for the storyline. You've been warned. Do not come crying to me if I spoil things. I told you.
It's been a couple years. You have no excuse. Play the game.
Yeah, so Kamea Arano was the heir to the throne of the Origin Reach when her parents died in a freak jump ship accident. During her coronation ceremonies, her uncle and the Espinosa family would wrest control of the nation from her and form the Origin Directorate. Presumed dead
Cowards.
after the usurpation? I can pronounce words. After the coup, we're going to use a simpler word. She would eventually return with backing from the magistracy of Canopus, which wanted to use her as a stabilizing influence between the Taurians and Federated Sons, or at least as a convenient bumper.
Some space, literally.
During the campaign leading the Arano Restoration, she would pilot a Kintaro 18, which was her family's battle mech, until she recovered a Atlas II, a Starleague Defense Force relic from a old cache. However, she would eventually turn over this mech to a mercenary company once she restored the Origin Reach to its rightful heir and ruler, Kamea Arano.
Herself.
It is unknown whether she ended up taking up the Kintaro again, but seeing as she did get rid of the Atlas, I'm assuming she grabbed her Kintaro off the dusty sideboard and started using it again.
Yeah. I don't get giving up that Atlas, but okay.
It's a bit of a tangent, but one of the greatest moments of the HBS Battletech game is when she Kool-Aid Mans through the wall and unloads on that, it's a Jaeger mech?
Yes.
Yeah.
And just sandpapers it with boatloads of SRMs.
Yeah, because at that point in the
Yeah,
campaign,
she's like,
you're generally not equipped to take on that Jaeger mech and its allies, Trebuchet
Yeah.
and something else by yourself.
Yeah, you've got one or two mediums and 3 or 2 lights or something No, you start off with 2 mediums, so you got 3 mediums or something, and that Jaeger mech is scary.
you've got 3 mediums and a light, and then a Jaeger mech Centurion and Trebuchet walk around the corner, and you're like, oh god.
And on tabletop, the Jaeger mech is kind of a joke, but in HBS Battletech, it's a monster.
HBS did a
Yeah.
really good job of fixing a lot of
they
things
did.
from tabletop.
They did justice to those old AC2s and AC5s.
Although it's still funny, some mechs are jokes and some mechs aren't jokes, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
this is interesting.
All right, our final pilot for tonight is Adept 4 Thim No. He was a linchpin in the Blakist 8th Division's Dragoon Teeth battalion-sized hunter-killer strike team. Boy, the Blakists like to be wordy.
Yeah.
She and her comrades would infiltrate enemy lines to sow their insidious seeds upon their unsuspecting enemies. They would tag enemy mechs with a variety of INARC electronics pods, and then lay the groundwork for the rest of their level 3, or the entire division, to come and lay waste to a group as large as a force of assault mechs. I mean, you could potentially get even larger if you're got a battalion-sized unit with INARCs tagging everything in the middle of the night. Since the beginning of the jihad, she and the other members of her level 3 have claimed hundreds of kill assists, making her a target for many bounty hunters looking to claim the sizable price on her head. I mean, the only good Blakist is a dead Blakist, right?
That's right.
So now I want a short story that's a squad of very angry battle armor squads that have the little compact narc launchers that they can get, and they sneak into a base in the middle of the night and narc every mech in the place, and then sneak away, and the next day the enemy mechs go out into the field, and all of a sudden there's this missile.
hit them with Nemesis pods, and then they wonder why their airstrike they called in hits them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, let's continue talking about classic Battletech and some of the things that we think are a little bit broken or we prefer, don't prefer. Earlier we were talking about changing engine size versus adding jump jets to a mech that traditionally doesn't have them. Like I said, I think it is a bigger change to the mech's profile to add jump jets than it is to change the tonnage of the engine.
I mean, to be fair, they're both pretty big changes. The implication with adding jump jets to a mech is this whole like flight stabilization system and circuitry. It's a pretty big overhaul. I just feel like on the tabletop, for me personally, changing the movement profile, like I can always rely on a hunchback to move 4.6 until it doesn't. I forget the variant, but they drop a bigger engine into it. And I'm like, is it a hunchback anymore?
Yes, it is the best hunchback. It is the commando that always should have been.
Yes.
We covered that. It's
When you need a scout
the
mech.
Hunchback 8S.
Yeah.
This 7S,
Um,
but yes.
7S, yeah. I love that hunchback. So for me, I'm kind of the opposite because we've seen mechs add mask and then later on superchargers. But mask and TSM are the early ones, and then superchargers, which bumps our run profile up. Is it a whole bracket?
It's to double instead of 1.5, isn't it?
Yeah, but it essentially works out to be a whole bracket up because you go from a 4.6 to a 4.8, which would be like being a
Yeah.
5.8, or
Right.
from a 5.8 to a 5.10, which isn't quite as good as a 7.11.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen that, and that doesn't change the engine size, but it does give us a much higher top speed. And to me, there are some mechs that, like the Commando, we know that guy needs to be a little bit faster in order to be a really good light mech.
Yeah, it's a bit on the slow side.
So giving it jump jets would change its mobility in Classic, but it would change it drastically. Whereas you bump it up an engine size or something, and it still feels like a Commando because it's still running. It's just running a little bit faster, and it feels a little bit better.
Yeah, to be a bit of a hypocrite here, you've got the I'm trying to remember the primitive technology Commando before they upgraded the engine, the one with just the large laser running at a 5.8 and switching over to a 6.9. I feel like that's not such a big change. So it matters when I think it does. And then it doesn't when I think it doesn't, right?
Yeah, and I can see your point of view mostly from MechWarrior Online because of the urban mech, and I'm used to thinking of the urban mech as a very slow 2-3, carries an AC-20, but then you play MWO, and everybody's turned it into the so-called suburban mech, which goes as fast as any other light and has mostly small lasers, and it doesn't feel like the same mech.
No, it definitely doesn't.
But we're talking going from a 2.3 to going to a 6.9 or a 7.11, so that's a much bigger jump than taking a 6.9 Commando and bumping it up to a 7.11.
Yeah, and the difference between 2.3 and 3.5 is pretty astonishing, actually.
Yes.
More so than the difference between like a 5.8 and a 6.9, I would say. So you end up with these interesting, movement brackets. Like, off the top of my head, I can only think of the Annihilator and the Urban Mech moving in the 2.3 bracket, which is just so ungodly slow. And bumping up to 3.5. 3.5 is such a quintessential assault mech movement bracket. If you take barring the Banshees and the Chargers and the Victors. But then those mechs kind of stand out because of their movement profile. Like a Banshee's a Banshee because it is 4.6, or a Victor's a Victor because it's 4.6.4. Yeah, I feel like it ties to the identity of the mech quite a bit. Both jump jets and engine size, because that's what ultimately controls its movement profile.
And I think it might be a bit different for some of those very quintessential TRO 3025 mechs that are so deeply ingrained. This is a 3.5, this is a 4.6.
Yeah.
And that's their personality. But then there are because I think there's a lot of other mechs where if it goes from a 5.8 to a 6.9 or a 4.6 to a 5.8 as a heavy, you go, okay, that's a cool change. I like the greater mobility, but it doesn't feel wrong because it's not so deeply ingrained that this is the profile.
Yeah, those old chassis have some inertia. if you take like an avalanche and you change its engine size, like, do I even reliably know what the avalanche does? Like, how many times have I put Dark Age mechs on the table as a younger player who started playing recently? But those older chassis, even for me, they're kind of, they've got so much character and inertia. I guess that's why I feel like it's more wrong for the Hunchback to be a 6'9" or a 5'8", as opposed to the Commando moving from 5'8" to 6'9", because that's a part of its fluff going way back, right?
Yeah. It's interesting though, because you do see old school Banshees that there are 3.5 variants and there are 4.6 variants.
Yeah, true. The one with the 2 PPCs and the AC-10 as opposed to the 5 and the PPC.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it matters if I think it does.
What about you, Chandler?
I feel like it's very tied behind the fluff of why it's changing. So like if someone in air quotes is like, oh yeah, this is a new variant and it's a field refit and we added jump jets or we added mask or we added something that's you have to almost do a full rebuild to get to work properly, I'm much less readily able to accept it on an outlook rather
sense.
Than like, to use an example from a mech I was messing with the other day, the Thanatos. The quote-unquote stock Thanatos goes 5'8". The Thanatos I like, which is the one with the LB20X, who would have thought, goes 4'6". But yeah. I was messing with it, and I was like, I can rip the engine out of a Mad Cat. It's the exact same engine, just bigger, and it's Clan XL instead of an Innersphere XL, and slap it in there. And, headcanon, to redesign the mech to have the smaller engine to go 4'6", they didn't do much. All they did was rip out the old engine and put in the smaller engine and just use the weight savings to be able to do other things in the arms, which is what they did. And so, like, for a field refit, headcanon, that makes sense because structurally it should work. Granted, you're trying to mate a Clan Tech engine to an Innersphere chassis, which is a mess.
Well, you're going from a standard fusion to an XL, right?
It's an Innersphere XL to a Clan XL, yeah.
Okay.
So for you, as long as the fluff isn't written up as going down to Jiffy Lube to get your engine switched, it works for you. But
yeah,
if it doesn't make sense.
And then sometimes, like with the Kintaro, like none of the other ones jumped. And while it makes sense because the Kintaro K was like a brand new production line Kintaro, so like all that, but it also you kind of lose a little bit of what the Kintaro was, which was a non-jumping mech that did fire support
tied to the earth
kind of stuff. Yeah, and so it's really a case-on-case basis.
Yeah.
What's your guys' take on some of these like post-jihad, quote-unquote, field refits that were designed by mech engineers for the Republic of the Sphere to take all of these old designs, update them to a single, more modern standard? Like I think it's not the Rifleman 8D. There's a Rifleman that gets jump jets because of that. It gets like 2 snub-nose PPCs and jump jets. And that was part of the Republic of the Sphere designing field upgrade kits that would convert a bunch of their salvaged riflemen to this new standard.
The 8X?
8X sounds right.
I mean, not to spoil anything, but the Republic of the Sphere is gone, so who cares, right?
But I mean, it's an example of a field refit that was done, but not just by some mechs on the battlefield. It was a whole military program.
Yeah, it was a doctrine shift, right?
Yes.
I mean, personally, especially with the field refit set, it's like, oh, it's a quote-unquote field refit for the entirety of a military. It feels much less like a field refit and much more it went back to the shop and while it was there, got brought up to the new standard like a lot. I mean, to use a historical example, when German tanks would get sent back to the factory during World War II for repairs, they would update them. Granted, some of the updates they couldn't do because they didn't fit, but what they could, they would.
Rifleman 7X. It not just gives it jump jets, it bumps it up to a 696.
Whoa.
Yeah, a rifleman with a 696 movement profile.
Yeah, and with the snub nose. And I mean, does it still lacking in the armor department? Or does it slap a bunch of armor in that bad boy too?
9.5 tons of light ferro.
Yeah, so still a little skimpy on at least it's lacking in the armor department. I mean, if you threw more armor on it, I'm sorry, man, that's just a different mech.
It's armored like a medium still, but...
Yeah.
And see, that one kind of bugs me because it's not like the field refit. I think the term you were looking for earlier, Chandler, with the whole military doing it is SLEP, Service Life Extension Program.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, but going from 4.6 to 6.9.6 is such a big change that I don't like. I still feel it like it's a rifleman to some extent because it's got the twinned weapons in each arm, but it doesn't move like a rifleman anymore, and it's not just a little upgrade. Like going to a 5.8.5, okay, that would be a strange rifleman, but it would still be in the rifleman ballpark. But going to a 6.9.6,
God, what's it even a field refit from? The 7M?
no, I think it wasn't from a single specific chassis. It was supposed to be, we've got all these riflemen that we recaptured from Blakist mercenaries or Blakists themselves, and we want a unified configuration for our military.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which I think you can do with the rifleman more easily than some other mechs because its weapons are all in the arms.
Yeah.
So bolt new arms on, and there you go. But speaking of jumping, I said it earlier in this podcast. I think jumping is the most broken mechanic in classic Battletech. Hot take.
Hot take? Yeah, that's a pretty hot take. I mean, jump jets are, I would agree partially for the lightest jump jets, the 0.5, the half-ton jump jets, especially in that sweet spot, the 55 tonners. I feel like the assault and heavy mechs pay an appropriate tax in firepower for their 1 and 2 ton jump jets, but half-ton jump jets on the medium mechs are, I mean, it's like free real estate. Like, why wouldn't you have a 5.8.5 between the 50 and 55 tonnage range?
Yeah, well, and for me, it's even with the assaults and heavies. Yes, they're paying significantly more, and they pay a decent tax. But in every other kind of miniatures game I've played, anything that lets you ignore major portions of the rules is unbalanced. And jump jets essentially let you ignore the movement phase. You don't care about elevation changes as long as it's less than your number, your jump MP.
Right.
You don't care about moving down regardless of the height difference. You don't care about intervening terrain like woods or rubble or buildings, unless again the buildings are taller than your jump number. You don't care about water unless you land in it and your jump jets are submerged. Other than that, it's pick an area, pick a hex within your jump range, and you go there. You don't have to pay facing changes, and your penalty, yes, it's a +3, and yes, the heavier mechs, I think where they are more balanced as jumpers is not so much in the firepower cost they pay, it's in the fact that they jump shorter ranges. It's like a 2.3.2 jumper, which I think there's an urban mech that does that.
Probably.
That's a really bad jumper because it's only going 2 hexes and it's taking a bigger penalty than it's inflicting. Jumping 4, you get in many ways you're always going to move further jumping 4 than you are running 6.
Yeah, but you're still taking +3 and generating a +2 when you jump 4, which is the victor problem.
Yep.
The Hunchback 5S problem, you mean?
Yeah.
But it still lets you ignore most of those movement rules, which can be huge. But where it gets really bad is when you start jumping 5 or more, because then your penalty is the same as your opponent's. When you jump 7 or more, it's always a positive for you. And at that point, you just have so much mobility because you don't care about the terrain. You don't care about movement rules. It's I'm here, now I'm here.
Yeah, mechs with jump jets have just a straight up threat bubble, especially those incredibly nimble ones. Like you think of your Dragonfly or your Viper, if you're not a dirty spheroid.
Hey, whoa.
Yeah, jumping 8 hexes is ridiculous. And same thing with the Spider. I feel like in 3025, I feel like you with the single, only having access to the single heat sinks, it's not as egregious. You think of like the Griffin, which is a great model, but sometimes you really are making that cost benefit analysis. Like, sure, I can jump 5, but I'm generating as much heat as my LRM rack or half the heat of my PPC. So you're faced with some tougher decisions, perhaps. And +3 that's a lot. That's pretty devastating.
Fair.
Yeah.
And I've used that Griffin. Go ahead, Chandler.
I think the problem is when it turns from a utility to almost an offensive weapon, the jumping. Like there's some mechs where it's like, oh, it's a utility. Like the Shadowhawk's a great example where it's got 3 jump. That's a utility. It's there to get you out of some really stupid spot you got yourself into, or to get you over that building, or through the woods real fast. But then when you start getting into mechs where you're jumping like 6 or 5, or getting into weird numbers, it starts to go much less towards utility and much more towards, I'm going to use this as a weapon to kill you with. And then the guns are just there to make sure you actually hurt.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm used to playing post-Jihad, where you see more improved jump jets and stuff, where heat isn't really an issue with them anymore, because you take half heat, and you can put them on heavier mechs and have them jump the same distance they run. Because yes, this traditional spider with 8 standard jump jets and 10 single heat sinks, I can see that being a problem heat-wise. But at the same time, playing jumping mechs, I don't have a problem going, I am going to jump, get behind you, and then alpha strike and go 12 points of heat, and then jump away and cool down for 2 turns. Because guess what? Jump jets ignore heat movement penalties.
They do. Well, let me ask you this question. Even in the Dark Age, or the Jihad era, do you find yourself bringing a list comprised of exclusively jumping mechs? I feel like if something's an auto include, like if you're going out of your way to leave the terrestrial mechs behind, I think that's a sign that it's kind of broken.
So for classic, no, but with a caveat. Most of my classic play came in the form of a campaign, and we had a little bit of mech customization rules, but all I used it for was to take the Wolverine 9W2 and take its two light PPCs and replace them with a snub. That mech was an auto take. My Hammer Hands was an auto take with 5 improved jump jets, because they both had C3 Slave. And then my third auto take was a Battlemaster M3, because it had the C3 Master and a light Gauss rifle. So I would have that Wolverine jumping around scouting, because it had a C3 Slave, ECM, and it jumped 7. And it was an auto take that would jump around. You could not touch it for the most part. And then it would provide targeting data to that Hammer Hands, who would also jump around a lot because he was a 3-5-5. So he needed to jump to be able to move. And then because he's receiving short range targeting data for his 2 Rack 5s, he doesn't mind jumping so much. And then I have that light Gauss rifle with the C3 Master hanging out in the background.
I will say, when you get into, I've heard it called Gundam tech before, and I kind of frown upon it. I don't necessarily want to play against it, but if you've got a nimble, jumpy mech with nothing but pulse lasers on it, I'm like, all right, let's take the cheese and get it out of my game.
And see, I don't think it's too difficult to kind of balance that out, because Alpha Strike, they changed the movement rules to where obviously there's no running, which is going to drive some classic players nuts. It's not a huge loss in my opinion, because you turn for free, and usually when you run, it's so you can make a turn or 2. And when you stand still, you get a -1 modifier. So you're incentivized to stand still, even though you don't get your target movement modifier bonus to your defense. That -1 is really nice. When you walk, you pay no penalty at all. It's a 0 mod for walking in Alpha Strike, which again is probably going to drive a classic Battletech player nuts at first, but it takes a lot of the, do I run, do I walk, do I stand still, and it's more of a positional thing. I need to be here. How do I get here? And then jumping is a +2 modifier. So you go from -1 and 0 to a +2, and it's a much bigger jump for your modifiers, and so it makes you think a lot harder about jumping. And I find that alone makes me go from, all right, my Wolverine is an auto take, and I'm going to be jumping with him every turn, to, okay, I really don't want to have to jump unless I need to clear terrain, because that penalty is so big, comparatively speaking.
Yeah, that's going 0 to 2. That's pretty big.
0 to 2 in Alpha Strike flat.
One last thing. Jump jets in tabletop versus MechWarrior Online or any of the other MechWarrior games, and quote-unquote real life.
I mean, jump jets turns your mech into like a short-range VTOL, right?
I wouldn't say a short-range VTOL, because I understand where you're coming from because you vertically take off and you vertically land.
Right.
But when you say VTOL, I think of something that can do that over a significant distance, whereas with jump jets, even
Yeah,
on
it's short range.
yeah, short range, but you're still talking like 330 meters is your longest jumping mech that's in standard production.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of beside the point. VTOL, short range VTOL. What were you gonna say after that?
I was gonna say, yeah, short range VTOL. That's like if I could imagine bipedal war machines, blasting off and landing. That's kind of what it looks like in my head. What else you asked? You asked about classic.
Well, it's like in classic, we've talked a bit about classic and how it lets you ignore most of the movement phase. I'm talking like how in MechWarrior Online or MechWarrior 5, MechWarrior 4, were jump jets as powerful as they are in classic? Were they as necessary?
Oh, no. I didn't feel like, in MechWarrior 5, positioning was super important. Plus, the jump jets kind of worked strangely. I think it was in MechWarrior 4 where your jump jets are kind of dynamic. You kind of explode off the ground and then kind of slow down and then accelerate again, which was kind of good for jinking, making it harder to be shot at, which makes sense. That kind of translates, you adding to your modifier. But yeah, really, it boils down to if the game designers are building missions where you need to get where you're going faster with jump jets than if not. Because if you don't build that into the game, then you're just going to drop the jets and add the weapons and the armor. So it's hard to say.
What do you think, Chandler?
I definitely feel, especially someone who's played much more MechWarrior Online than MechWarrior 5, which I've not played any MechWarrior 5. And then comparing it to like classic Battletech, it's so much more of a utility item in MechWarrior Online. It's extremely useful if you need to find some weird way to get around someone's flank, get somewhere they're not expecting you to be and then shoot them, distract them at the very least from other people, and then they can shoot them even more. It lets you be the gnat in someone's ear or, the guy who's stabbing someone in the back with, 20 small lasers because MechWarrior Online. It's so much more utilitarian. It's not the primary method of getting from point A to point B. It is I'm going to use this to let me get from point A to point B faster or safer.
Or I was gonna say the safer thing, dropping off of a cliff to get down into an area instead of taking the long way around.
Or it's even an escape route. Like, let's say I'm stuck up on some bridge and someone's shooting at me. I can now hop off the bridge without having to worry about fall damage because I can just brake on the way down.
So, and this is why I bring this up, because the Shadowhawk and its 583 was mentioned before, and the 583 Shadowhawk always gets hate from people for having that weird movement profile.
Yeah.
And I always find myself defending it because I think in a realistic setting, which we get slightly more of in video games, I believe, the jump jets are just like what Chandler said. It's a utility item. Whereas in classic, and this is one reason why I abuse it, but I dislike the mechanic, jump jets feel like not necessarily an auto take or a must take, but they are a primary method of movement if you can jump 5 or more. And even if you jump less, they're so good at clearing terrain in classic Battletech that a lot of times I'll play a game without using traditional ground movement if I'm using one of my jumpers. And I wish we had more of that lore, real world video game feel to jump jets in classic Battletech, where it's a utility item, not a go-to movement mode.
I see what you're saying.
But classic Battletech 2.0 is a topic for another night.
Right.
You guys got any other thoughts on jump jets, classic Battletech, or anything else?
Weapon you would most like to be added to classic Battletech?
The weapon I would most like.
I mean, I got that's an easy one for me. Just give me the HBS Battletech autocannons.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like
I
that would fix so much of the griping. Yeah. That's just like an easy peasy. I mean, then you don't have to wait for your like Civil War era alternate munitions for your AC2s and 5s, especially the 5. Oh my God, I hate the AC5 so much.
And I think it would make a lot more sense for that AC5 to be 8 points of damage like it is in HBS.
Yeah.
Because the large laser the AC-5 is the main tank weapon up until the development of the Battlemech. There is the Marsden, which has an AC-10, but the AC-5 is by far and large the main tank weapon up until the age of the Battlemech. And then the large laser is the other newer, more innovative main tank weapon, but it's 3 points of damage more.
Yeah, so it would make more sense for you and the rest of us for those to kind of be on parity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my wish list.
Yeah.
Give me those autocannons.
If that's what we're talking about, not some weird, crazy like summon asteroids weapon, then yeah, I want the autocannons from HBS.
What about you, Chandler? Chandler. I don't know why I said Chandler. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Well, I'm going to do a minor shout out to Madrop because I know exactly what he wants me to answer. Is the rotary long tom. That's his answer. I say no to that. No rotary long toms here.
Rotary long tom. Oh my god.
But it can only be vehicle mounted.
Yes. And then people joke that I need a rotary AC-20, which I, on one hand,
I mean,
as
just
an
take a
AC-20
UAC-20.
person, well,
Okay,
I can only shoot 2 shots with
have it.
that.
Take three
rotary
UAC-20s.
AC-20.
No, I have it. A rotary Gauss rifle.
Just rotary Arrow 4 while you're at it, right?
No. See, we just turn
Speaking of-
Arrow 4s into packs. So you get like 3 Arrow 4s in one shot.
Detachable Arrow 4s, where you can just pick it up and you have a mech-sized bazooka that shoots a one-shot Arrow 4 missile.
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger commando style, right?
It would be funny to put on a commando.
I'm actually going to go out into the bushes with this one. I want heavy battle claws to mean something. I gripe about this all the time whenever it comes up. Whenever someone mentions battle claws at all, I come into the conversation and complain about them. Yeah, you probably saw this on the Mech Bay Discord the other day.
I did.
I'm bringing it up again. I hate how heavy battle claws are just window dressing.
I don't even tell me about it because I've never used them. I don't even know what the rage is all about.
So battle claw is a battle claw. It does what battle claws do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy battle claw does exactly the same thing. There is no
Just weighs
difference.
more.
Yeah, it just weighs more.
That's crazy.
There's literally no difference.
I think the idea is heavy battle claws are supposed to allow heavies or assaults to ride on mechs, but they don't actually allow that.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
I think
heavies
that's
can ride either
the
way.
lore reason. But I think that's the lore reason is the heavy battle claw was supposed to allow heavier battle suits to ride like medium and light battle suits.
Yeah.
But the rules don't actually reflect that.
Oh, and then while we're also on the battle claw topic, make regular battle claws be able to punch people like infantry.
Yes, they.
Punch them.
Yeah.
You don't need your your claw to vibrate at a very high rate to be able to punch someone.
Now, to be fair, you can still melee with other infantry with a battle claw, right?
No,
It just doesn't do any
You
bonus
can't.
damage.
no,
You can't.
you can't. You're not swarm attacking, therefore you can't. Exactly my point. It doesn't make sense. Like, rules wise, it makes it faster. And, how often do you actually run into infantry squads? But at the same time, it's like one sentence that you need to add for it to actually be a thing.
One of these days we're gonna have a conclave of the podcasts and workshop Battletech 2.0 to sort out all of these little things.
We'll just walk
Yeah,
into
that'll
CGL's
definitely,
headquarters and we'll have this massive book behind us and we'll just set it down on a counter.
These are our demands.
But then we'll have to find a different counter because that first counter will break.
Well, first off, we'll have to find CGL headquarters. That'll be a ROM-worthy mission in and of itself.
Hey, safe. Search and find everything, man.
All right, well, I think we'll call it there for tonight. Our sources for tonight were Technical Readout Succession Wars, Technical Readout 3039, Technical Readout 3050 Upgrade, Technical Readout 3075, the related record sheets, Sarna, Master Unit List, as always.
I have the Battletech video game by HBS and the House Arano, the Origin Coalition. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Coalition book.
And of course, our big brains while we discussed classic Battletech and the things we love and hate about it. Thank you for joining us, and peace out, Mech Warriors.
Stay safe out there.
Don't forget to calibrate your Dalben Urban targeting system.
This podcast is made possible by our supporters on patreon.com/on the Origin of Battlemechs, link in the description. Our social media on Twitter is @Origin of Mechs. We also have a community Discord the Armory of Ouroboros, link in the description. You can email us at ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your platform of consumption, tell your friends about us, and share on your community platform of choice. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
This guy has a strange. Nope, never mind. Cut this.
Not this one.
No, I'll have to message the mech factory guys. For some reason, their Kintaro 18 has overheat long as its special ability, which makes no sense.
Yeah, with an LRM5.
Mm-hmm.